What's the first thing you think of when I say the word activist? Maybe you imagine them as mild-mannered pacifists. Perhaps you picture Molotovs or anti-fascist anarchists, radicals, extremists, renegades, catalysts. However you define them, I just never liked the term, because the very word implies that I'm a certain type of person. The associations that are made are quite disturbing. The very name itself often feels to be a burden. I'm a normal guy. I go to work to earn a living. It's just I want a better world for you and I to live in. I'm not a violent person. On paper, I'm a pacifist. I care, and so I act. And if I act, then I'm an activist. Now, when it comes to protest, Britain's got a rich tradition. Many broke the law so we could live the way we live in. Every decent thing we have was won. It wasn't given. If we didn't have those activists, we wouldn't be Great Britain. It's something to be proud of when it comes to being British. But in recent years, it's not the same as before. The rights we had to protest are fast being diminished, all because of very dangerous changes in the law. I'll start in 2014 with Cameron's UN speech, where he essentially said that we should end speech. In addition to violent extremism, the next frontier of extremism is non-violent extremism. Violent extremism starts as extreme thoughts. His speech laid the ground so they could introduce Prevent, which means they can arrest you for thoughts inside your head. They can come for anyone they claim to be a threat. It doesn't matter if you didn't act. Thinking means arrest. Anti-terror laws are controversial in the UK. They say that they were introduced to keep me and you safe. But now we've got to recognise the laws are being weaponised to label you as criminals if they don't like what you say. The laws are being used to stop us peacefully protesting. Anyone objecting to the state can be arrested, attacking British people they were supposed to be protecting, causing all the terror they were meant to be preventing. Case in point, Stansted 15. Now you might have heard the story. 15 people at an airport. They drove up and cut through the fence that surrounds it. Activists there to stop a plane becoming airborne. They were scared, but they were prepared. No time for doubting. They knew what they had to do. It's what they were there for. They approached the plane, then they locked themselves around it. 10 hours later, they were still there at the airport. They all got arrested, but the plane stayed grounded. Now, you might be wondering, why all the drama? Well, this specific flight was something called a charter. It was a deportation flight with 60 people on board, all being deported to Nigeria and Ghana. People who were vulnerable, people seeking amnesty, people fleeing war, global warming and catastrophe, people facing persecution, misery and death. And yes, some of them were foreigners, but people nonetheless. And a lot of them are documents. Not all of them were foreigners. 11 of those people had every right to stay. That's just a fact. At least 11 had documents. I know, because to this very day, they live in the UK, which is great. But the 15 all got charged of aggravated trespass, criminal damage and an airport bylaw. And after 4 months, they learned the Attorney General has said that it's terrorism they'll be facing time for. They were charged under Section 1 of the Aviation and Maritime Security Act 1990. A terror charge. They went from trespass to a terror charge. 3 months in jail versus life behind metal bars. You want to know what terror is? You want to find the terrorists? Go to the Home Office. That's where terror lives. Kidnapping people, putting them in vans, separating families, putting them in camps. That's terror. Beating them behind the bars we built for our security, like Jimmy Mubenga killed by G4S security. That's terror. Keeping people locked up for long amounts of time when being born somewhere else is their only crime. The violence of the hostile environment, the lies, the charter flights, sending people somewhere else to die. Please forgive me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I've made an error. By any common person's definition, that is terror. The more I see, the more it seems the guilt is with the system, which would mean the guilty are the judges, which is twisted. The charges that they chose reflect a personal decision, and that's why the 15 face up to life in prison. That's why they aren't pursuing aggravated trespass, which I'll say again would be a 3-month sentence. That's why they suddenly decided on a terror charge to vilify the heroes so their own guilt's deflected. The laws are being used to stop us peacefully protesting. Anyone objecting to the state can be arrested, attacking British people they were supposed to be protecting, causing all the terror they were meant to be preventing. Activists like the Stansted 15 display courage. They risk their own freedom to protect others. They don't gain anything. They only want justice. So how do we respond to them as the British public? Do we commend them? Do we see their purpose? Do we all recognise and celebrate their service? Do we stand with them against corruption in the system? Or do we call them terrorists and lock them up in prison? You voted for Brexit. You chose to break away. You wanted British sovereignty, to have a greater say. You want to take the reins to define what being British is. So what exactly do we tell the world Britain is? Is it killing thousands? Is it kids drowning? Is it racist policy? Is it this howling? Is it blaming immigrants for taking all the housing when the real enemy is sitting up in Downing? Is it a state of surveillance in our mind and on the pavements, controlling how and when we can meet in public spaces? Is it terrorising people because they come from different places? Is it an empty heaven because our heroes are in cages? When it comes to protest, Britain's got a rich tradition. Many broke the law so we could live the way we're living. Every decent thing we have was won. It wasn't given. If we didn't have these activists, we wouldn't be Great Britain.